It's well, let's find a middle ground with the agency. Oh, okay. Well, we split the baby. Let's keep splitting that baby. Okay, but we just split the baby. Now we only have half. Now it's a quarter. Now it's 12.5. Now it's whatever half of that is. So that's not working. I think we can definitely say that whatever the public lands movement is doing, and I would say the environmental movement as a whole, has not been working. Welcome, Wild Ones. This is Josh Schlossberg, host of the Green Root Podcast, the official podcast of Eco Integrity Alliance, where we're on a quest to uncover the roots of the ecological crisis. For this episode, I want to talk to you about the Yin-Yang of the environmental movement. Now, I just wrote an article released on Eco Integrity Alliance's Substack, which you can find at ecointegrityalliance.substack.com, and you can subscribe for free. And the article, well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Yin-Yang of the environmental movement. It's the two different poles that had been defined by some Eastern thought. And to make it very simple, it is about yin being about being and yang is doing. So I'm not going to read the article. Obviously, you can read the article yourself. I lay out the terms, but I want to talk about my personal experience with the article because I tried to write it in a way that was more objective and dispassionate and wasn't really just about how I or Eco Integrity Alliance or others such as myself engage. It's more general, but that's why I thought it might be worth a little solo episode to just go into it. And yes, to get you to read my article. So read my article. All right, here's the gist of it. A lot of us who do what some would call stronger advocacy, we find that it's not always appreciated, and not just from our opponents, obviously, but within our own movement or what one could call a larger movement. And more, I'm seeing that our movements have been almost completely absorbed by one polarity, and that would be the yin. So that would be framed as, let's just say, the softer approach, the come to the table approach is another way of looking at it, versus the yang, which is more, we got to push hard to get what we want. And what I make very clear in the article is that both are necessary, is what I believe. And that concept of yin and yang is about balance. And I point out how yin is extremely important, and it might not be something that I'm personally as attuned to, but I acknowledge its importance, and maybe there are even things I don't understand or appreciate about it. But I would say it is safe to say that our movement has become a bit too much yin, and for us to regain a balance and start winning again, I would say it needs a bit more yang. So I do come to that conclusion in the article, spoiler alert, but I don't get into many details. So I want to just go a little further into that. So I think when I first was a younger person, I was more attuned to yin. I was a bit more passive and didn't think stirring the pot was always the best option. It's not entirely true. I got in trouble in school a lot, but for being too outspoken. But I would say I was a bit more vibing with the just let's be chill, particularly in my high school years. And this isn't going to be about me and my boring life. Who cares, right? But I'm just trying to personalize this to make this human. And because I've learned that when you talk too general about concepts, people don't follow them as well as making it a bit personal. So I might have been a little too far to yin, at least during certain periods. I think it can be argued that I have gone too far over to yang in some ways. But I want to explain why some of us might do that, and it doesn't necessarily excuse it, but it doesn't necessarily mean we're doing anything wrong, right? We all have our different roles. But the way I see it is maybe I overcorrected. And what sometimes some of us are doing is like we feel the need to be extra yang because there's so much yin that has dominated, ironically. And yin is powerful. It just does things in a different way. As I put in the article, it's more like water eroding stone over long time period versus just a mallet to a piece of rock. So what has ended up happening is that maybe there was a time when there was too much yang in our movement, but a lot of bravado and just kind of bluster. But now we've lost that almost entirely. And in fact, those voices are almost never to be heard, and they've been sort of pushed out. Now, folks like me start up our own organization. So Eco Integrity Alliance was started up by several of us in 2021 who basically, I would argue, have the yang approach and maybe a balance in some ways as well, but have seen the yin just destroy our movements. I'll say it. Just the idea of not being soft-spoken, like, well, we should protect public lands. That's not what I'm talking about. It's let's find a middle ground with the agency. Oh, okay. Well, we split the baby. Let's keep splitting that baby. Okay, but we just split the baby. Now we only have half. Now it's a quarter. Now it's 12.5. Now it's whatever half of that is. So that's not working. I think we can definitely say that whatever the public lands movement is doing, and I would say the environmental movement as a whole, has not been working. So we need to figure out a different way. And maybe this is a piece of it. So with those who are so focused on, well, come on, let's find the Big Ten. And, maybe it's okay if they do a lot of extraction on public lands, as long as we're able to, and it's like, what are we even doing at that point? I understand the idea of communing with and engaging with other people. So if you want to be like, hey, these are the agencies, we gotta find some common ground. They're not doing that with us though. So it's a very one-sided thing. When your side is like, we will only operate in this way, the other side's like, we're going to do whatever we want, whenever we want to. And they're actually in charge of everything and then outspend us billions to one, have influence across media and everywhere else. But they're the ones who actually control the public lands in this case. But this can apply to environmental movement as a whole or other movements. But it's not been effective. I think we can say that at this point. So can we try another way of doing things, which means adding a bit more yang into our yin to try to find that balance? And the balance might be precarious. It doesn't mean it's going to be a perfect equilibrium. It's sort of just like, okay, well, here we are. Oh, maybe a little too far. And I'm hoping that is what the future can be. We're doing that at Eco Integrity Alliance, where we have, like I said, had to start up our own efforts because some of us have worked in other organizations and we just find that the yin dominates and there's nowhere for those who really want to push the envelope to operate. So there are many folks out there and many organizations, usually grassroots organizations, who are embodying either a balance of yin and yang or focusing a little bit more on the yang. And like I was saying before, because there is such a gap in the yang, maybe some of us are like, we need this, and then we go overboard with it. I think that might be a fair critique. That's something that I try to be aware of. Is it all aggressive all the time? I think we have to do that, and that's the problem with yin. Yin says we should never do that. No. But just because some folks aren't pulling their weight in that way doesn't mean we should overdo it necessarily. So I think that might be the place where we can operate inside our movements. And I see it like the yin shadow. So I talk about this light and shadow component in the article. So very dumbed down because I am not a psychologist here. The concept of light is positive aspects, not necessarily, but the ones that are outward. And then shadow, a Jungian concept, is can be darker stuff, but not necessarily negative, and it's more hidden components. So I would say it's pretty obvious what the yang shadow is, right? It's being overly aggressive, unnecessarily so, damaging, self-sabotage, whatever. The yin shadow is harder to point out, but I think it's metastasizing. And it is those exclusion, the whisper campaigns against other advocates. That's so common. It's not even a blunt, hey, we're trying to find a middle road here, and I understand what you're doing, but we don't like it, or we can find a place for that. It's none of that. It's just sort of like, anyone who does this stuff, we don't like, and we're going to push out. And then the real harm is that the yin shadow is just, without authority, giving away our land. Like there is no environmental group has a right to say, here, you can take all of this. Just absolutely no right. Now, we should try to protect everything, and maybe that doesn't always happen, but offering that up, I would say, is a yin shadow gone amok. That's too much. And that's the vast majority of the environmental movement at this point. I'm not going to name organization names, but I think you know probably who I'm talking about. And it does tend to operate more with the larger organizations because they're trying to keep their funding flowing in, and they have larger staff, and a little controversy is good for them because they're like, oh, look, we're fighting the good fight. But if they do too much of that, they're going to lose corporate foundation funding. They're going to lose the supporters. They're going to lose that Big Ten approach. And again, like I say in the article, there may be a place for that in some way. I wouldn't say selling out the lands, but a good cop to a bad cop, because maybe for right now, the bad cop, I don't know why we have to be the bad cop, but say the idea of having public lands protection, complete protection in the form of however you want to frame it, but at Eco Integrity Alliance, we like to talk about biodiversity, watershed, climate refugia. So that's more of a positive vision that I think is something that those of us in Yang can lean into as a way to balance what a lot of the yin, which is sort of just like, well, sometimes we'll protect some places and just no real strategy behind it, no real clear vision. So we have this positive vision, and it is a yang push, right? There is a doing to it, but it's not necessarily just a reactive negativity, which I will admit I fall into when there are just endless threats, and yin, which has most of the money, is not really doing much about it, or is even promoting the extraction. So perhaps that's the way forward. And this is really what I want to hear from you about, because this is your basic concepts, right? My own version of this doesn't matter as much as the concepts and what you think. So first of all, in the comments, I would love to see you responding. Do you feel as if the yin shadow has overtaken a lot of our movement? That idea of just, well, we'll take the middle of the road. We're not going to stir things up or ruffle too many feathers. So that's number one. Number two, do you see a value in some yin that does not do that? As in, hey, we have a really positive, sunny view on things. We want to get people out in nature so they can appreciate it. I think that's a positive component. And then do you see, though, sometimes that leads into but we're going to push out any of the controversy because we're so intent on getting this big tent. And it's like, well, it's nice to feel good about yourself, but is the difference between feeling good and doing good. If you're not really pushing the envelope, at best you're defending the status quo. And right now we're not even doing that. So I would argue that's not super awesome, but want to hear what you have to say. And what could a positive yang vision look like to bring people together on the generally same page? And what could, a lot of questions I'm asking here. You don't have to answer all those. Maybe just answer one of them in the comments. What could this yang manifests itself as. So it could be a positive vision. It could be some other hardcore activism where we, completely legal, of course, where we push forward very, very hard or push back against things that are just not working out really well, say in some of these agencies. What is missing? And ultimately, will it always be that yin dominates in our movement? And is it the case that because it's just easier to do yin and it causes less problems and the opposition is less triggered by it because it's often not really a threat to them, is that just destined to be what the majority is? Is that just where most people are going to gravitate if there's an option to put out some sort of event where it's like, hey, we're going to fight the good fight here and really change things, but it's going to be a long, hard thing, versus, hey, come to this thing, feel good about yourself for a few hours, and then that's the end. Can we ever compete with that? I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to these questions. These are things I'm trying to figure out. I've been doing environmental organizing for 20 years. I took a little bit of time off to do environmental journalism and then was just doing journalism in general. So wasn't operating the entire time. But for the most part, I have been. So I'm trying to learn, and I'm trying to not be overly rigid and be like, well, this is the way I always did things, or this is the way we did things in the past, or whatever. So it's about integrating information. What was successful in the past? What hasn't been? What might now be relevant that wasn't in the past, right? Because things are a little bit different these days. Maybe things that didn't work in the past will work now, or things that did work won't work. So all those ideas, and I've just wanted to offer this one tidbit of how this yin-yang may play out. And yeah, just kind of maybe figure out where you feel like you lean, right? I've admitted I think I lean towards yang, and which can mean I can nurture a little more of the yin self. Maybe you lean towards yin, and just being aware of not demonizing folks who have a different preference, not excluding them, not marginalizing them. That is really killing our movements. I'm seeing this all the time. And right now, the yin is dominant, and it is, I think, really doing a lot more harm than good. That's not to say that yin itself is more harm than good. I would say it is equally important as yang. So are we out of balance? Are we out of whack? What can we do to move forward? Is this concept even legitimate, or is this just me trying to fill up time and get people to click on my article? I don't think it's that, but what do I know? I'm just all yang, right? So anyway, thanks for listening. Would love to hear your feedback.